Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're wading into some pretty turbulent waters.
Yeah.
We're looking at a situation that's been all over the headlines but often feels, well, complex, maybe a bit fragmented.
Definitely.
We're plunging into the widespread protests across Indonesia in 2025. It's a really critical story, a nation grappling with some profound changes, serious economic pressures, and frankly, big questions about its democratic future.
Absolutely.
So, our mission today, as always, is to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. We've done the legwork, sifted through a pile of sources, everything from detailed Wikipedia entries, academic journals, economic reports, even eyewitness stuff.
Yeah, quite a stack.
Think of this as your guided tour. We'll unpack the key drivers behind these demonstrations, the government's reactions, some pretty controversial ones, and the deep impacts this is having on politics, yes, but also just on the everyday lives of Indonesians.
Exactly. And hopefully you'll get a sense not just of what's happening, but really why it matters. We'll connect the dots, between policy shifts, public feelings, market reactions. This deep dive should give you a comprehensive view, sort of cut through the noise, and deliver some clarity so you can form your own views.
Okay, let's dive in then. Starting around February 2025, Indonesia saw this major wave of protests spreading out. What exactly kicked it all off? What ignited this discontent? And where did that hashtag Indonesia Jalap, Dark Indonesia, where did that come from?
Right. Well, the protests really started as a direct response to several policies from the new administration. President Prabowo Subianto and Vice President Gibran Rakabuming Raka. The sources we looked at point to a potent mix of, let's say, deep-seated grievances.
Okay.
On the economic side, ordinary people were feeling a serious pinch. You had rising unemployment, significant jumps in property taxes. I mean, some reports cited increases of 250% in patati, 300% in bone.
Wow.
And get this, between 150 and 1,000% in Cirebon.
1,000%. That's unbelievable.
It's huge. And at the same time, you saw these massive budget cuts happening. Now, the official line was that this was to fund a new free, nutritious meal program.
Okay.
But then reports also surfaced about increased allowances for council members. So that combination, it just created this sense of economic injustice, really added fuel to the fire.
I can imagine. So economic pain was a big part, but you mentioned other things too.
Yes, definitely. Democratic concerns were just as big. There were widespread allegations of democratic backsliding, things like crackdowns on free speech, numerous reports of police brutality during protests, that sort of thing.
Right.
And specific policies really angered people. Presidential Instruction Number 1 of 2025, that's what led directly to those budget cuts we mentioned. Then there was a proposed change to the mineral and coal law.
Ah, yes, I remember reading about that one.
Initially, it looked like it would allow universities to get mining permits. Now, academics and students immediately pushed back hard. They saw it as a veiled attempt to maybe silence activism by tying universities financially to mining interests, plus worsening ecological damage.
So co-opting dissent almost.
That was the fear. Now, that specific proposal was later dropped when the law passed in February, but the initial idea really set off alarm bells.
Okay, so it's this convergence, isn't it? Economic hardship hitting people directly, combined with this growing worry about democratic values, maybe institutions weakening.
Exactly. It wasn't just one single thing.
And that hashtag Indonesia Jalap, you said
Yeah.
it came out of this. How big did that get?
Oh, it exploded. Hashtag Indonesia Jalap became incredibly powerful online. It took off on Twitter, X now, reportedly used in over 14 million tweets in just 24 hours back in February.
13 million in a day.
Yeah. And a digital research firm found something like 81% of the sentiment attached to it was negative. It wasn't just a catchy phrase, it became a potent symbol online. Representing, as one source put it, the fears, worries, and well-being of the citizens. Kind of a shorthand for all that anxiety.
That's incredible speed for online sentiment. So it sounds like this initial wave was driven by that mix of economic pain and democratic fears. But you mentioned the protests evolved. Was it just things escalating, or did something new happen?
It was an evolution, yeah, but definitely spurred by new developments. That first wave was pretty quickly followed by what you could call a second phase. And this phase often rallied under a new, very specific hashtag. Hashtag Talak or TNI.
Which means?
Reject TNI law revision. This shift really gained momentum as a key piece of legislation. The Armed Forces Law, or UTNI, started moving through Parliament.
Okay, let's focus on that UTNI revision then, because it sounds like a major turning point.
Right.
What were the actual changes in the law that caused such a stir? Why was it so controversial?
Right. This was huge. The revised law passed on March 20th, and it brought in two really significant changes. First, it increased the number of civilian government jobs that active military personnel, TNI members, are allowed to hold. It went from 10 roles up to 14.
14 civilian roles. What kind of jobs are we talking about?
Key agencies, actually, things like the National Agency for Disaster Countermeasure, BNPB, and even positions within the Attorney General's office, the Kijigum.
Wow, okay. And the second change?
The second change adjusted retirement ages for military personnel based on their rank. This potentially allowed some high-ranking officers to serve until they're 63, maybe even with extensions beyond that.
Okay. So more military and civilian jobs and longer careers for some officers. Why was that so explosive? What was the big fear?
Well, the fear, and this is crucial, connects back to Indonesia's history. Critics immediately jumped on this, arguing it could potentially revive dui fungsi.
The fungsi, the military's dual function.
Exactly. Their role in both defense and socio-political affairs. For anyone who remembers the Suharto era, that term carries a lot of weight. It evokes a time when the military had enormous, often quite authoritarian influence over civilian life and politics.
So a step backwards, potentially.
That was the deep concern. A return to a model many Indonesians thought was firmly in the past. And the public reaction was strong. An online petition calling for the law's repeal got over 26,000 signatures very quickly. Shows you how deeply felt that concern was.
That historical context, dui fungsi, definitely sheds light on why people reacted so strongly. So looking at these legislative moves, the TNI law revision, for example, do they fit into a bigger pattern? Are these isolated issues, or is there a broader trend analysts are seeing in Indonesia's democracy?
Well, connecting the dots, academic analyses we looked at from places like Journal Trias Politica suggest these aren't really isolated incidents. They point towards a worrying trend, often called democratic backsliding or sometimes covert authoritarianism.
Covert authoritarianism, what does that mean in practice?
It means that democratic institutions might still exist on the surface, like elections, but the substance is being hollowed out. For instance, one journal highlighted that a staggering 60% of strategic cabinet positions under President Prabowo are now held by former military officers.
60%?
60%. That signals a pretty significant return of military influence right into the heart of civilian government. And that directly challenges the principle of civilian supremacy, which is, fundamental to a healthy democracy.
Okay, so that's one major sign. Are there others?
Yes. Another example often cited is the revision of the Pilkada law, which deals with regional head elections. The changes seem to centralize power, allowing the central government more say in local political processes.
Undermining decentralization, then.
Exactly. Which was a cornerstone of the reforms back in 1998, meant to give more power to local areas in such a diverse country. So this move feels like pulling power back to the center, away from local communities.
It sounds less like sudden shifts and more like a gradual tightening of control. You also mentioned the rule of law weakening. How does that fit in?
Precisely. It's this idea that the rule of law itself might be becoming less of an impartial standard and more of a, flexible tool. We're seeing frequent changes to political rules, things affecting who can run for vice president based on age, or how temporary regional leaders are appointed.
Right, things that seem quite specific.
They do, and this creates uncertainty. Critics argue it often appears to benefit those already in power, making the legal framework look like it can be adjusted for political advantage, rather than being a stable, impartial system everyone follows.
So, using the law itself to perhaps undermine democratic norms.
That's the argument. Some academics call this authoritarian legalism. Basically using legal processes and justifications, creating that veneer of legality for actions that actually restrict civil rights or consolidate power. It's like using the rule book against the spirit of the rules, if that makes sense.
It does. It paints a pretty concerning picture. You mentioned the government framing some actions around stability, but it sounds like the sources you reviewed see it more as suppression.
Largely, yes. While the government justification often revolves around security stability, especially regarding protests, the sources, academics, rights groups, journalists express deep concern that these measures cross a line.
Any specific examples of that crossing the line?
Well, the March 2025 riots were a grim example. Security forces reportedly used excessive force. Tragically, 3 demonstrators were killed, over 50 injured. Tactics like arbitrary arrests, intimidation of protest organizers, these were justified under that security stability banner, but widely condemned as repression.
And the media and all this, could they report freely on what was happening?
That's another area of serious concern. Press freedom seems to have taken a significant hit. Indonesia's press freedom index score dropped dramatically from 60 down to 45 in just 1 year. The country fell 20 places in the global rankings.
20 places, that's a steep drop.
It is. And there are documented cases of intimidation against journalists, not just threats, but really chilling incidents. Severed pig heads, headless rats sent to media offices like Tempo magazine.
Good grief.
Yeah. Journalists being searched, equipment seized while reporting, and perhaps most telling, a reported 70% increase in self-censorship among journalists. They're becoming afraid to report critically.
That suggests a real chilling effect, as you put it earlier.
Exactly. And it's reinforced by legal tools, too. Revisions to the Electronic Transaction Information Law, the UUITE, specifically Law Number 1 of 2024, now give civil servant investigators the power to, and I'm quoting here, temporarily terminate access to social media accounts, bank accounts, electronic money, and other digital assets.
Wow, they can just shut down your account.
That's the power they've been given. Combine that with the use of treason articles from the criminal code against activists. It looks like a systematic way to criminalize dissent. There was that widely condemned case of a student arrested for posting an AI-generated meme of Jokowi and Prabowo kissing.
Just for a meme.
It's just for a meme. It signals an extremely low tolerance for criticism, even satirical criticism.
So this chilling effect, where peaceful protest is seen as a threat, it sounds like it goes beyond just putting pressure on activists. It's changing the whole environment.
That's the argument, yes. It's more than just strategic pressure. It feels like a systematic erosion of civil society space. When peaceful protest is framed as a threat, not legitimate participation, it fundamentally changes the relationship between the state and citizens.
And for the average Indonesian, what does this mean practically?
Practically, it means even if you vote, your ability to hold power accountable between elections shrinks. Your freedom to speak out, to assemble, is curtailed. It leads to this decline in key democratic indicators: freedom of assembly, public trust. And that pushes Indonesia towards what some analysts call electoral democracy without substance.
Electoral democracy without substance, meaning?
Meaning you still have elections, the outer shell of democracy is there, but the core components, fundamental rights, checks and balances, meaningful participation are weakened or eroded. It looks democratic, but the substance isn't quite there. It's a significant shift.
Okay, it's undeniable the political climate is incredibly tense. Civil liberties are under pressure.
Yeah.
How did all this turbulence translate into the economy? What were the impacts on everyday Indonesians trying to make ends meet?
Well, the political unrest and these controversial policies definitely had tangible economic consequences. According to the economic reports we saw, it hit everyday Indonesians quite directly. A key indicator is household consumption.
Right, which is a huge part of Indonesia's GDP.
Over 50%, yeah. And its growth slowed right through 2024. Several things put pressure on it. Job losses, one report mentioned 46,240 workers laid off between January and August 2024 alone. Plus, slow income recovery after the pandemic and just rising living costs. Rice prices were high, food inflation was persistent, and then there was an impending 12% VAT increase slated for early 2025, which made households even more cautious, sort of holding back on spending.
So people were really feeling squeezed. Did the financial markets react to the political instability?
Oh, absolutely. The markets got jittery. In March 2025, the Jakarta Composite Index, the JCI, it plunged over 7% in a single trading day.
7%, that's massive.
It was its steepest drop since 2011. It actually triggered an automatic 30-minute trading halt, and foreign investors reacted quickly, net selling of IDR 2.48 trillion. That signals a real crisis of confidence, at least short-term. Then again in August, after more violent protests, the JCI dropped another 2%. You can clearly see the link between political events and market nerves.
That definitely paints a challenging picture. You mentioned businesses earlier.
Yeah.
Did the unrest force them to take drastic measures?
Yes, there were direct reactions. Malls in affected areas like Atrium Senayan Park, they temporarily closed or cut their hours because of the unrest. And maybe more strikingly, luxury brand stores in high-end malls like Plaza Senayan were seen actually emptying their display cases.
Emptying the shelves, why?
To prevent potential looting. It shows a real, tangible fear that civil disorder could spill over and affect businesses directly. And nationally, the currency felt it too. The rupiah weakened against the US dollar, 0.38% in February, another 0.86% in late August, just reflecting that broader economic unease.
Okay, given all that the market drops, the business closures, the pressure on households, it sounds pretty bleak. But is that the whole story? Are there any, I don't know, silver linings, signs of resilience, maybe opportunities amidst the turmoil?
It's a great question, and what's fascinating is yes, despite these really severe shocks, the picture isn't entirely negative. There are definite signs of resilience and some significant future opportunities. For instance, that JCI index. By August, it had actually recovered all its losses and even broke its previous all-time record.
Really? After those big drops?
Yeah. It suggests a certain underlying confidence or perhaps adaptability in the market, maybe looking beyond the immediate political noise. And economic projections overall remain somewhat positive. Head economists are still forecasting growth around 5.15% for 2025.
What's driving that projected growth then?
Mainly still household consumption despite the pressures and investment. Inflation is also projected to stay relatively manageable. So there's this sense that the fundamental economic engine, while strained, isn't broken.
Interesting. Any specific economic sectors showing promise?
Yes, a big one is the government's push on downstreaming minerals and coal, basically processing raw materials domestically rather than just exporting them. This holds huge potential. Long-term projections estimate something like 91% of downstream investment value that's potentially USD 566.7 billion could be in the mineral sector by 2040.
Wow, that's a massive number.
It is. Just nickel downstreaming alone is projected to add billions to GDP and create hundreds of thousands of jobs. So that's seen as a major economic opportunity if managed well.
Okay, so there's economic potential there. But what about the people? That chilling effect on civil society you described, is there any pushback, any signs of resilience from citizens themselves?
Absolutely. And this is where the story gets really dynamic. Despite the increased repression, civil society, NGOs, independent journalists, academics, students, they haven't gone silent. They're continuing to advocate for rights, often finding creative ways to express dissent.
Creative ways? Like what?
Well, one really interesting example was protesters adopting the Straw Hat Pirates' Jolly Roger flag from the anime One Piece.
The pirate flag from One Piece.
Seriously. It became an unofficial symbol of defiance. It taps into this popular culture narrative of freedom, rebellion against oppressive forces. It's a fascinating way to mobilize and create a shared identity outside of traditional political symbols.
That's amazing. Using anime as a symbol of protest. Were there other unexpected alliances or forms of support?
Yes, quite notably, K-pop fan communities got involved. They apparently provided logistical support, even helped arrange ambulances for demonstrators during some protests.
K-pop fans organizing ambulances.
Yeah, it shows this surprising level of civic engagement from a group maybe not typically associated with street activism. It highlights how diverse and, well, unpredictable civil society mobilization can be. People finding different ways to participate and support each other.
That really underscores the resilience you mentioned. What about the outside world? Has there been much international reaction?
There has been. On one level, governments like the US, Canada, the UK issued travel warnings, which is a standard response to unrest. But perhaps more significantly, major international NGOs, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, they've strongly condemned things like the military law amendments and the violence against journalists.
So international pressure is building.
It signals global attention, certainly. Whether that translates into effective pressure on the government remains to be seen, but it means these issues of civil liberties in Indonesia are definitely on the international radar.
Okay, so we've taken quite a journey here, a deep dive into this really complex, often turbulent situation in Indonesia in 2025. We've explored the protests, the controversial policies, the economic hits, but also the resilience, the surprising ways people are pushing back.
Yeah, we've seen how specific laws, government actions often framed as being about stability, have raised really serious questions about the future of civil liberties, about democratic institutions, prompting those concerns about covert authoritarianism. And at the same time, the economic challenges for many ordinary Indonesians are undeniable, even with those potential future opportunities like downstreaming.
It really feels like a stark reminder, doesn't it? That democracy isn't something static, something you just achieve and it's done. It's this living, breathing thing, constantly being shaped, tested, By governments, yes, but also by the people in all their diversity, sometimes in very unexpected ways, like with anime flags and K-pop fans.
Absolutely, it's a continuous process. So thinking about all this, if democracy isn't just about holding elections every few years, but it's fundamentally about protecting civil liberties, ensuring genuine participation, holding power accountable, what steps do you listening now think are most critical for Indonesia to take to prevent that slide into electoral democracy without substance and instead genuinely safeguard its democratic future? Something to think about.